even though it had a pretty good hold for a Marvel movie in its second weekend, it's still an overall dollar amount that is a little disconcerting at this point. It's almost a 0% chance this movie is going to get to close to 600 million. Again, I think it's going to be, at this point, if it finishes up between 400 and 450, I think right now that seems to be about the most realistic possibility, which means it's going to wind up beating a Captain America film, which is kind of even more embarrassing, to be honest with you. Thunderbolts right up there at the top with 33 million, down 55% right now from its first weekend as per estimates. Now, what we need to realize with that is those estimates are estimates. They can change, right? We could get here by this time tomorrow afternoon. That 33 million they're estimating could be 32, could be 31, could be 36, could be 35. That's where we are. But I will say the estimates coming into the weekend were not 33 million. And we'll get to that momentarily. But what I want everybody to observe right now is here is the Thunderbolts. This is through the first 10 days of release. $272 million. Now, that looks like a great number. And this is really for the folks out there that have not been around, the newer folks that maybe have not heard this type of conversation before. But what you need to realize with this is that'd be a very good number for most movies. It's not that great of a number for a $200 million production budget film and another $100 million or so when it comes to global marketing. This movie still has to get to $600 million by the end of its theatrical run if it wants to break even in the box office. And of course, the farther that it falls short of that dynamic, all right, or at least that measurement, pardon me, for $600 million, or the more of a loss that it's going to incur for the Walt Disney Company. And that is something that Disney has been having a major problem with so far this entire year. For movies that were released in calendar 25, but that's been the case for Snow White and for Captain Falcon DEI, Captain America Brave New World, whatever. Captain African American, as Gary over at Nerdrotic calls him. $500 million is the figure that we've been putting out there that looks like, insofar as we can decipher through our best educated guess on what we've seen in terms of reshoots, known quote-unquote production budgets, adding in and using historical data from Disney for the last several years and seeing how much they usually overrun, making a very safe, in my opinion, very, very safe estimate that they're about $500 million in the hole right now between production and marketing for these films put up against what they netted back from theatrical distribution. Thunderbolts is not going to help. Thunderbolts is not going to help, as of right now, move that number back more towards a baseline of zero or break even. I think this movie is still on track at this point. Being realistic with this, you have this weekend is done. You've got next weekend, and then that's really it. The weekend after that, all of the IMAX or PLF screens or whatever Thunderbolts is enjoying now in terms of premium large format with that 20 to 30% ticket price boost being in those PLFs where people usually want to go see these films, that's all going away. They're going to have to get out of the way and make way for things like Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. It's just what it is. So the question is, after 10 days on the box office, between now and the next, say, 10 to 11 days, can Thunderbolts get to $550 to $600 million? It seems highly unlikely, if not nearly impossible. It's just not the way this thing is moving. If I had to guess right now, considering the performance of the international market here, there is a decent shot at this point that it could eventually beat Captain America Brave New World. It's still about 150 million or so, 140 to 150 million away from that. And I realize that looking at this, you're looking at, well, it's already got $272 million. Okay, it surely can do another 140. It could, but the window for that happening is tightening up fairly quickly, because once that Memorial Day weekend rolls out, once you get Lilo and Stitch, once you get Final Reckoning out there, Mission Impossible. There is a massive cascade in the weeks after that of new big blockbusters coming out. This is going to push Thunderbolts off the map very, very quickly. So they really have until about May 21st. Like I said, 10, 11, 12 days from now. I think that might be Thursday previews. May 22nd might be the Friday. Whatever that Friday is that weekend, when those two new movies come out, one of them, of course, obviously from Disney, that's pretty much going to be it. It will still certainly trickle in some dollars and cents here and there, but I don't see this thing getting to its break-even point at the box office. And as we continue to remind folks out there with Thunderbolts and with all these Disney movies, there's really not much of a revenue stream for them after they leave the box office. And that's the biggest issue. It's going to go to Disney Plus. Disney writes itself a check, and that's all she wrote. Now, it could enjoy some PVOD sales. Maybe it makes some money from there. Maybe it helps cover the cost. But as far as I'm concerned as being in the box office, given where it is now, if this thing finishes up around 400 million, which I think reasonably it should at least get there by this point. I was originally thinking, maybe 360, 375 million. Certainly that's still on the table, although the chances of it being that low seem to be slipping. That was based on it turning in a typical second weekend performance for a Marvel film of being down about 65%. Well, that didn't happen, right? The word of mouth for this is not overwhelmingly awesome, right? The normies still have checked out from Marvel, and that's Disney's biggest problem, is that that normie audience are the people that have been so chided and so disrespected by Disney out there with Marvel and Star Wars that just have no interest in showing up anymore anyway. And that much is just, it's factual. You can see the box office. It's right there. But you look here, you look at the drop in the second weekend, 33, so 55% as of right now. So that's 10% better, raw numbers, right? I was expecting 65 in that range because that would be normal Marvel phases 4 and 5 for sure. We got 55. So it did better than we expected. But again, it's still about $12 million based on current estimates for the weekend. It's still about $12 million behind Captain America: Brave New World, at least domestically. And that's part of the issue. So the question is, does it have enough strength to continue to close that gap? I'm not sure, because after opening weekend, it was already about 14 million, if memory serves, about 13 to 14 million behind Captain America. I think if it's only behind about 12 now. So the gap is closed, but not dramatically over the first week. And again, like we always talk about with Marvel movies, again, and I don't think this is going to be radically different, is that we usually say that by the first, 5 to 7 days of a Marvel movie being out, you can pretty much set your watch by the fact that it's got at least half of its box office already baked in. So now we're 10 days out. 272 million combined global. I would say that we absolutely have more than half. We probably have 60 to maybe even 70% of the box office baked in. We'll have to see, but that still means this movie is going to lose probably around $100 million at the box office. And again, I stress at the box office because we've always used the at the box office situation for people out there, because we have to delineate between in the theater versus post-theatrical. And Disney honestly has one of the worst post-theatrical models of any of the major studios out there in terms of their ability to generate revenue. Now, they have gotten better. They have gotten better in the last few years, affording more robust windows for PVOD, premium video on demand, for both sales and rentals. So applauding Disney for that one. Hey, look, give credit where credit's due. They are holding the theatrical window open at a more lengthy period of time, 60 to 70 to 80 days, depending on the success, quote unquote, of the film. Again, it's still not going to, is this movie going to rake in $100 million of PVOD sales? If this movie lands and finishes at around 400 million or a little over $400 million, is it going to be able to sell enough PVOD rental and full sales, right, for $25 and $20 a pop or what have you? Are they going to sell enough of those things for Disney to recoup what at that point may be still sitting $190, $80 million in the hole? I don't think so. Because remember, even if they sell $100 million of copies at the retail level, that's not $100 million that's coming back to Disney, right? You still got the retailers, the people like, especially if it's PVOD, iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, or whatever else is Movies Anywhere, whatever all these things are out there now. Those entities, I think most people would do it through iTunes or Amazon. That's where everybody buys these things now. They've got their commission on it. They've got their overhead and sales. They're going to take down 25 to 30% of that sales price, which is one of the reasons that, companies like Disney are now selling PVODs for 25 and 30 bucks in some cases, because they already know they're going to lose the first $7 to $10 of it too, if they do it for 30, to an Amazon or to an iTunes. Updated after a previous Friday and Saturday, Disney Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts is lower than expected, with a $33 million second weekend, but still a great hold for an MCU title at negative 55%. Okay. It said that's not that far from Shang-Chi's down 54, and certainly better than Captain America Brave New World's down 68% in its second weekend. Okay, let's stop right there and go back and unpack that a wee bit. Everything that Anthony said there is correct. Totally correct. No issue with that there. And look, y'all know me. I do like Anthony D'Alessandro's reporting. He usually is very matter of fact. Here's the data. Here's the numbers. And in this case, he's right. It's lower than expected. The $33 million is a little less than what so what did they expect? They expected 35. They expected 35 million. So they were expecting a drop, not quite 55, but maybe a drop of around 53, 52, somewhere in that range, right, from the opening weekend. But it came in at 33 million. Now, what do we usually say to folks out there? Anytime that you have projections coming into a box office weekend, and those projections come out on, say, a Thursday night or a Friday morning, right, before any of the actual business is in. And then by the time we get to Sunday and those projections have been adjusted down, that usually means, again, obviously, they overestimated the performance of the weekend. But the point is to say that typically the Sunday estimates that we get right now, the $33 million second weekend itself may be a smidge high. And I don't think it's going to be, it's not like it's going to be, well, it really only did 28 million. That's not going to, well, it could happen, but the chances of it being off by that much is about as close to zero as possible. But it could come in a little bit less. It could come in at 32.8 or 32.6 or something like that. Or it might come in at 33.5. I don't know. But it's an estimate for right now. But usually when you're tracking like this and it's, it's a better hold than average, that's true. But then again, it didn't really have that huge, strong start. It didn't open, right? It didn't open with $162 million like Minecraft did. And when Minecraft dropped around 50% in weekend 2, I was like, kind of doesn't matter, because the first weekend, the first weekend's $162 million, okay, and the second weekend drops off 50%, and the second weekend hauls in $80 million. I'm like, yeah, but it's still $80 million freaking dollars. I mean, on a movie that cost, what did Minecraft cost? What is it, like 120 or 150 million? I got to go back and look. I can't remember right now. I think it was about 150 million. Half the cost, less than half the cost of Snow White, half the cost of Captain America Brave New World, right? Thunderbolts, insofar as we know, and again, giving it some deference because we don't have any other information that would make me reconsider this, but Thunderbolts, let's assume it came in right around the budget of around $200 million, another $100 million in global marketing. Okay. It's a big difference when you drop 50% from a $74 million opening weekend, and now you're down at 30 in the low 30s, which is, again, it's still a good second weekend. $33 million for an entire weekend for any movie out there. 90%, 95% of any movie out there would still be very good. Unless, of course, you're talking about a $200 million production movie. That is not good. Again, Disney is not in the movie-making business. They're in the money-making business. Same as Apple, same as NVIDIA, same as Walmart, same as Target, same as Amazon, same as Facebook, same as everybody. Everybody is in the money-making business. So even though they make a product, that product still has to make money. Even though they make the product, and that's what they want to make, the product still has to turn a profit. Nobody goes into business saying, let's go make something so we can lose money on it. No. No, that's not how it works. So again, this is why I still have my cause for alarm with this, even though it had a pretty good hold for a Marvel movie in its second weekend. It's still an overall dollar amount that is a little disconcerting at this point. It's almost a 0% chance this movie is going to get to close to 600 million. Again, I think it's going to be at this point, if it finishes up between 400 and 450, I think right now that seems to be about the most realistic possibility, which means it's going to wind up beating a Captain America film, which is kind of even more embarrassing, to be honest with you. The Florence Pugh, Wyatt Russell, Sebastian Stan, David Harbour, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Hannah John Kamen Marvel Ensemble currently stands at $128.4 million, which is $12.7 million behind, there it is, Captain America Brave New World through 10 days. However, it feels like, particularly with Memorial Day weekend coming up and the summer movie going of it, that this MCU title can catapult past that pick's $200.7 million final. Thunderbolts is $10.3 million ahead of Eternals at the 10-day point, which ended its run at $164.8 million. Remember that Disney movies have long theatrical windows. Well, they do now. Deadpool and Wolverine had a 67-day window to PVOD. Okay, I don't think that the Walt Disney Company is using this preset stock standard PVOD window of 67 days or whatever. Deadpool and Wolverine was a massively successful film, not because of Disney, not because of Marvel or the MCU. It was massively successful simply because it was Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine and Deadpool. Two characters played by two actors that a huge swath of fandom and a massive ton of normies, and that's the key, really wanted to see on screen together. They didn't care about what was going on in the rest of the MCU. That movie held in theaters as long as it did. It was given a huge window because it consistently and continued to perform again and again and again, all the way up to, what was it, $1.5 billion around the globe, okay? That doesn't necessarily mean that everything out there is going to have that. Now, Disney, if they are wise, will give everything at least 60 days to try to maximize the revenues that they can get back from theatrical exhibition. Remember, the shorter the window that you have, the less the theaters are going to agree to pay you as part of the ticket prices for your film. Okay? Movies that go into theaters and get day and date released with streaming get a pittance for what they put in theaters, by comparison, at least. Movies that have a 17-day window or 30-day windows get a little bit more. Movies that have 45-day windows tend to get much more favorable. And if you have 60 to 90 days, you're probably getting paid the most in terms of percentage, right? So if you buy a $20 movie ticket, it's the difference between a film studio getting paid, say, $6 to $7 of that ticket versus maybe $10 to $11 of that ticket. And when you scale that out to millions and millions of tickets, especially when you're talking about massive $200 million production budgets, you're talking about a lot of money and the difference between profit and loss. Because Thunderbolts and Warner titles lost a tad bit of steam in comparison to what we're seeing earlier this weekend, the entire marketplace is now looking to do an estimated $86.7 million, 10% down from a year ago. That frame boosted by Disney Fox Studios opening of Kingdom of Planet of the Apes, again, 1 year ago, at $54.8 million. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.